So, okay. I don't even know, honestly, if I'm gonna be able to afford Christmas presents this year.
Well, that's now a part of the podcast. you're, you're
You brought
doing
it
so
up.
good here.
You brought it up.
Well, no, I'm trying to log into Amazon so I can change the email because Dad sees all my emails, and if I order him Christmas presents, then obviously he'll see what I buy him for Christmas, and then that's not very surprised like. But you need your damn password to change your email, even though I did the two-step verification and it was like, oh, it's you. But you
But Megan, he's gonna know what you get him for Christmas anyways, because he's gonna open the present eventually. So, it doesn't matter. He knows already.
that's not how Christmas works.
Time is a fluid thing.
Like sea serpents.
Yes, like sea serpents or lake serpents.
See how I tied that in there, Dad? See what
Yeah,
I did?
yes. Uh, now I can look at both of you at the same time.
We have a guest. And we
I
can't
can
hear Dad.
Byvoicey.network.
Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
Oh, good.
he looks extremely concerned.
Well, because my expensive podcasting mic just crapped out on me.
See how this expensive quality phone right here just
Hey,
remains.
that phone was expensive. All
I
right.
know, I paid for it.
So here we go. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can see my little microphone thing moving.
Yes, indeed.
So we're joined today by Alex, Megan's brother, my older son, who said, "Wait, you guys started a podcast and didn't invite me? What the hell?" So
It's been 5 weeks.
Yeah.
We've had a podcast for 5 weeks.
also
How was
Before
I
you
supposed
noticed.
to know if y'all don't tell me?
so we decided that we should be nice and participatory. So I
Going.
this is our second week in Maine,
Yes.
and I was looking at aliens. And so this time, instead of being completely ADHD, because okay, here's the thing. Aliens in Maine is sort of like Bigfoot sightings in the Olympic Peninsula. All right. Every third person has an alien story. And in fact, if you remember last time, Megan, I had said that I thought one of the first alien abductions ever in the United States that was reported happened in Maine. I was wrong. It was in New Hampshire next door. So yeah, there you go. But I have prepared for you a share. Let's see if we can get this to work.
Did you make a
yeah,
slideshow?
I did.
Aliens in Maine. Man, this is already about the same quality as most of my school projects.
Yes, but mine was on time.
Hey,
Oh,
hey,
damn.
hey.
You gotcha. Oh, damn.
All right.
Anything's
So
on time as long as it's turned in.
also true, depending on
So Alex's mind time is fluid.
Exactly.
So this is one of my my favorite things that I ran across. So this is off of YouTube, but it was actually a news report all throughout Maine for a while, which is, just look at the title: UFO sightings in Maine are way up despite official count. We now live in a country that there are official counts of UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon counts. And in fact, I actually looked this up because I'm just this big of a geek. In Project Blue Book, which ran from 1947 till 1969, which is a primary time for two things: alien encounters and drugs. There were 12,610, I think, reports that went to Project Blue Book, of which 790 or so are still anomalous. And of course, one of the very first things you read on that is like, oh, well, see, they debunked 11,000, whatever, 11,500 of these things. It's like, yeah, except that all you need is one actual alien encounter to be an actual alien encounter for it to be true that there is alien existence. So this is this guy Normer Selvik, and Selvik, dude, if I'm mispronouncing your name, which I clearly am, is it Slevik? Yeah.
Slevik.
Okay, great. on you CBS 13, I think it is, out of Maine. So, and we're not watching
Had
all
an
8
encounter
minutes.
of my own when I was 3 or 4 years old, and that was kind of a catalyst for the rest of my life up to this point. I found the phenomenon fascinating, and at a really young age, I started collecting stories from family members and from friends. And as time went on, I started scouring newspapers for stories of otherworldly encounters, UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, things like that. But my fascination always was with extraterrestrial encounters. So in my mid 20s, I was looking at my bookshelf, my personal bookshelf, and I didn't have one book on UFOs in Maine. And it turns out that there wasn't one. There were a few books out that had some stories in them, but there wasn't one book solely dedicated to them. And for some dumb reason, I thought I'm the guy that's going to do that. So it took me about 6 years to write my first book, which was UFOs Over Maine, that came out in 2014. And at that time, I was utilizing newspapers, MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and NUFORC, which is the National UFO Reporting Center. And I was using reports, utilizing reports from those agencies and from newspapers. And as time went on, and as I got deeper and deeper into the field, people started to come to me to share their stories. I think they knew, I don't know if it was my writing style or my personality or what, but people seemed comfortable in sharing their stories with me and would allow me to share their stories to the general public.
I just have to make the comment on this one, which is, number one, the fact that there are 2 separate reporting agencies for UFOs is kind of interesting to me. Also, this guy remembers having a UFO sighting when he was 3 or 4 years old, which I sometimes can't remember what I had for dinner yesterday. So
I was
God
gonna
bless
say I
him.
didn't think that
Thanks.
permanent memories were made until you were like 4 or 5.
I remember the day you were born, Alex.
Yeah, well, I do too, only because it's been described to me so many times about how I got poked in the eye and someone wanted to shove me back in a drawer. So
That didn't happen the day you were born, but I distinctly remember, like, I have memories from 2 and 3.
I don't remember much besides like
Had
some
an
pain
encounter of
from
my
surgery.
own when I
Yeah, it wouldn't let me advance to the next slide.
Oh, that's
Oh.
so rude.
All right, I
This
gotta
is
find
in
the.
Massachusetts.
Well, I know. Well, this was done. They were speaking in Maine, but this gentleman was Massachusetts, but this lady was Maine, I think. If it comes up.
Experiences with, since I can remember, would come in and be dressed in black cloaks. There would be usually 2 of them, a taller one.
I just want to point out her
smaller
name
one.
was Starborn.
They would, a blue light would come in
What would
through
be
the
a
window
headband?
or under the door. And the thing that they used to do was, I would hear my parents out in the hallway, like it was my parents out there, and I'd be, sitting up, Mom, Dad, and the door would open, but it wouldn't be my parents, it would be aliens.
My brother's house at 2, and I was walking, and everything went completely black. And as the light's turning on, I'm hearing my name, Kevin. Kevin, we're not here to harm you, Kevin. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help you. And
We're not here to harm you.
I was gonna say, I wonder if it included the accent or not. I can already hear how that place is pronounced, Bahaba.
Bahaba, Maine.
Bahaba, Maine.
Oh no.
So and listen, I'm not really making. Well, okay, I'm a little bit making fun of these people, but I'm not really making fun of these people. What I am saying is there's a reason why this subject is not taken seriously. But also, I have to say that there's a lot to be said about, we now have the government is, of course, admitting or saying that they think that there's, life out there.
Experiences
Oh,
with.
for Lord's sakes. And then I just really got this out of this. This is about I think this is less than a minute or maybe just over a minute. But in case you ever want to know, Maine ranks 5th overall for UFO sightings in the United States. So yeah, it's like
Looking
19
for
seconds.
beings from outer space, Maine apparently is one of the best places to spot UFOs. According to satellite internet data collected from the National UFO Reporting Center, says Maine has had more than 900 sightings. That is 5th overall. So there you go.
So
maybe aliens are really like lobsters.
maybe,
Or
you
sea
know,
serpents.
it could be any number of different things. But I mean, the reality for me is, I mean, as you two definitely know, that I'm all in that aliens have to exist, and to me it is just simply a matter of statistics. You cannot have 100 billion galaxies with 100 million stars in each one and tell me no, there's no aliens. I can't buy that. Now, have they come to Earth? That I think is a different question. I was listening to a podcaster. Admittedly, he's a rather religious guy, and so his, when the government started doing the hearings in July about the UAPs and everything, and he's like, these aren't aliens. There are no aliens on Earth. What they are demons. And I'm like, you find that more plausible? You
I
find
was gonna say, I find aliens a lot more plausible than any type of religion, but that's just me personally.
well, I know I have the religion aspect, but the idea that people seeing, UFOs and alien life forms or whatever, it's really demons coming to steal your soul. That seems
Excessive.
yeah. I mean, when we're talking out there, that's out there.
That's a theory.
It's a theory. It's also, I mean, it's up there with the people who think that, Bigfoot isn't a physical being, which is why they don't leave footprints everywhere they go. But they're a spiritual thing that crosses dimensions. And they say this with like a straight face. And I'm going,
I've seen people try to explain vampires the same way.
I've seen people
That
try to
there's
explain
like this
the
like
same way.
one like universal vampire ghost that just like inhabits random bodies throughout the space time, whatever, and just eats people.
I've seen ghosts explained that way. Same with fairies.
Fairies would make sense with that.
The fairy thing, I could get down with the idea of interdimensional or multi-universal creatures. I
could see
cannot
fairies
get
being
behind.
aliens.
Yeah, I could see that too, but I cannot get behind the idea that UFOs are demons. And again, I'm 100% not willing to look at, so you have 940 sightings in Maine alone. All right. I'm not willing to look at the people who have made these sighting reports and say that they're all liars or all morons. Like they've clearly seen something, or all high. They've clearly seen something. And as Mark DeWorth from one of the Bigfoot conferences said, is, yours, the supposition that everybody is wrong is not a provable. It's an unfalsifiable idea, but all you need is one to be true for everything to be true.
Right.
There has to be one definitive, undeniable, like straight, like there's no there's no question.
Right. Well,
then
I
once
mean,
that one's proven, then you're good. It's all plausible.
Right. Well, I mean, and that goes into a lot of different concepts, and of course what you accept for proof is what it is. I like the people who are like, well, it can't be can't be a UFO or a real UFO because it breaks the laws of physics. And it's like, well, yes, it breaks the laws of physics as we humans understand it, but to say that we understand physics better than everything in the universe understands physics that's so much egocentrism. That's almost as egocentric as saying we're alone in the universe.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's crazy because our understanding of the laws of physics and just the way the universe works is constantly changing. Like we're constantly expanding on that knowledge. Back in the day, I'm not great at dates, but I would say like what Renaissance time, maybe a little bit before that, we thought that the solar system and everything revolved around Earth.
Right,
we
heliocentric.
and then we found out that it is actually heliocentric and it revolves around the sun for the most part for our specific solar system. And then there's billions upon billions of galaxies and star systems and all that kind of stuff out there. So
Yeah,
like,
well,
who are we to say that we know exactly how it all works? There could be just that one trick to go in light speed, and then all of a sudden everything is possible. So,
right.
Right.
I'm not saying it was aliens,
But
but it was aliens. All right, what do you got for me?
I have so many sea serpents. Al, we're gonna go in a circle here because Maine seems to have a freakishly large number of sea serpents. Like
sea
it's
serpents
kind
or lake serpents or both?
both any. It's
Okay.
just it's a little strange. I'm a little concerned for the people of Maine at the moment. Like
I
maybe
don't want to go
even more.
kayaking there no more.
Like I don't know what to tell you guys. Like this is alarming. I'm gonna start with my favorite at the moment though. So right now I was looking into the Mount Desert Island Sea Serpent, and this is in the national park, Acadia National Park.
Yeah.
It was first reported in 1793 by Captain Crabtree, which I think is a
That's a
brilliant
lit name. That's a lit
Like,
name there.
excellent work. And it's a creature that was about 60 feet long, swimming next to his ship, and it wasn't bothering the ship or anything when it was just looking around at its surroundings. Like there was like a bird flying, and it was like, oh, okay, look at the bird, and like it genuinely had no interest in the ship. And actually I found a journal report, I'll send it to you, Dad, that was written in Captain Crabtree's journal about the sea serpent, and his entire crew was watching it. Eventually it dived back down and they didn't see it again. In 1819, a skeleton of a similar creature washed up on the shore of Desert Island. It was 100 feet long. The bones were taken to Boston to be examined by the cryptozoology department, and they seem to have vanished. Nobody
Of
has seen them
course
since.
they did.
Nobody has found them
That's-
since. Even finding articles about said vanished bones was pretty difficult. Like you had to go looking for them. But there were multiple accounts of the fact that bones were found. It was in the town's records, and they were sent to Boston and they vanished. Interestingly, recently they found a 98-foot long skeleton on the bottom of the Mediterranean in 2017. Not near Maine, just in case you're very confused with your geography, but
Is it a fossilized skeleton or was it like a decomposed skeleton?
I don't know. I just found it like right before we started, and I didn't have enough time to like really look into it. But I thought that was worth mentioning. There's Cassie, the sea serpent of Casco Bay. Also first sighted in the 1779 actually, by Edward Preble, who went on to become the Navy Commodore for the United States. He was on a ship called the Protector, and he saw a large serpent-like creature floating motionless close to the ship. Eventually the creature raised its head about 10 feet above the water. He fired at the creature. The creature dove back down and kind of didn't really swim away, but didn't really hover around either. He said the creature,
He said,
Yeah.
I don't care for this. Bloop, bloop, bloop.
He said, yeah, I'm not involved in this. Goodbye. There were similar sightings of both of these creatures throughout the centuries. They seem to have tapered off both around 1950s or so. The last sighting of Cassie was 1958. The current working theory as to why there have been less sightings, because there was a lot of sightings, like there was a ton. The working theory as to why there have been less sightings is because the harbors are so much busier now in Maine. And so the creatures have been avoiding the harbors due to the large presence of ships. Which tracks, like for larger marine animals like whales and stuff, like they no longer go as close to the shore because of all the ships and everything. Like, so I mean, logically that does make sense. There's 3 other sea creatures that I wanted to focus on for this, because honestly there were so many sea creatures in Maine that you kind of had to knock it down. Like you had to pick up your list and be like, okay, these are the important ones. There's one in Ponic Lake, first sighted in 1873. There's tales of a creature walking along the beach spewing flames. The last sighting, I believe this is the last sighting, I don't know if this is accurate, was in 1990 by a man who was the mayor of a town in Maine that I will not try to pronounce. It's about 13 letters long and half of them are consonants. I'm not doing it. Like I'm not gonna do it to myself. He was boating on the lake with friends, and they all claimed to have saw the creature. Descriptions seem to range from a giant sturgeon to a creature with a horse-like head, a snake-like body, and fins. There is no photo evidence of this creature, but there are over 1,000 documented sightings.
You know what? If you've ever seen a sturgeon, that description still makes sense.
I've never seen a sturgeon, so I will have to take your word for it.
Sturgeons have very weird heads, and they do have very long, slender bodies. So
okay, well, they're not supposed to be 65 feet, so
no, but they
I'll
do
let you
get
check
very
itself.
They can get pretty big, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest naturally like occurring one was like in the 20s, but I think that specific species is either extinct or close to it. They tend to average around 8 to a little in the teens.
Well, do they live in Maine?
But
Because
I would
I'm
assume
trying
the
to-
water's cold enough.
I believe they do, but they're more towards like the central US type area.
okay. Al, did you do the Poco Moonshine or the Saco River Curse?
I did the Poca Moonshine.
All right, I'll do the Saco River Curse, and then we'll move to the Poco Moonshine.
Poca
So the Saco River Curse is one of the older sea serpents in America. The first sighting dates back to 1547.
God dang.
A tribe of Native Americans worshipped a lake monster, a lake river monster, and then one night a trio of drunken sailors kidnapped a mother and a child, threw them over the falls, thinking that they would survive.
Interesting theory. Interesting theory on that one.
That's a good.
I believe they can fly. Oh, I was wrong.
No. The husband of said mother and father of said child happened to be a tribe shaman, so he cursed the falls, and it seems to have worked. There has been reports of a white monkey with webbed hands. Like, think of like, you remember in Teen Titans, like King Trident type situation? Yeah, like that, but white.
Yeah.
And he's been seen several times, most recently in the 1970s, but like this legend has persisted since 1547. Like,
That's crazy.
that's a little crazy.
So you were saying this is Saco River you're talking about?
Yeah. Some people think that he's actually an alien. I
That's
don't
one
know.
long-living alien.
Well, I don't know where they've arrived to this conclusion, if the origin story originates with a tribe of Native Americans, and a curse by a shaman. We have the countdown of doom. I don't know why they think that said white monkey with webbed hands is an alien.
So that tracks though with there's a ton of Bigfoot reports around the Saco River too. So
well, he may
It's
be
an
an
aquatic
amphibian.
Bigfoot. It's an amphibian Bigfoot.
yeah, well, look at Alaska and Otter Man. So I mean, they're supposedly found around rivers. All right, we have the countdown of doom going on. So Al, you're up.
The countdown of doom. Okay. So speaking of curses, the Poca Moonshine Lake Monster is a difficult one to unpack. So this one is basically a Native American legend and everything, but it was first documented by Europeans in 1882. And the basic premise of this is, and this is a crazy one. This is up there with the waterfall killing one that Megan just talked about. There was a shaman from, I believe it was the Algonquin tribe, and he was in the form of a big snail. And then there was a chief from a tribe that I'm not going to try to pronounce because I don't think I'm going to pronounce it correctly. And he was in the form of a giant serpent, and somehow the giant serpent lost to the snail. Don't know how that happened. Don't get me started on that one. It could have been like a cone snail, maybe a poisonous dart. I don't know. But so the chief in the form of the serpent was defeated and then was killed. I believe it was tied to a tree and then actually killed. And so, according to the legend, ever since then, there has been a phenomenon of giant serpents being in that lake. Now, depending on the accounts that you read, there's not very many like very good ones to read, to be honest. But there was a basic guide written by the Europeans in the 1800s, which basically counts down to because it seems to be more like a curse than an actual creature. It seems to affect the local snakes of like copperheads and like aquatic snakes of that lake. And so they basically have a guide that says, while on the river, if you see a serpent, pick it up, take a yardstick and measure it. If it is 3 to 4 feet long, then it's fine. If it's 30 or 40 feet long, then you have
You ain't picking it up.
You ain't picking that up. I don't understand exactly how that's supposed to work, but that is the best account I could find. But if you read further into it, a lot of Maine residents claim to have seen this serpent, this giant serpent, oftentimes seeing the wake that it leaves in the water. And it also is noted that it often seems to affect snakes in groups of 3 or 4. So there will be like pods. They described it as pods of these giant serpents in the group size of 3 to 4.
I'm sorry, if I see a pod of giant serpents, I'm dying. Like I'm
It's a coalition.
They're after you, Megan.
But it's a basilisk. It's the king of the serpents.
It's a very interesting one though, because like I said, like there's very scattered accounts, but it seems to be more of a curse or a phenomenon than a specific monster. Now there are some people that will call it like Poco, and they call it Poco like Nessie, and it's like just the big snake of that lake. But it seems more adequate that it is some sort of phenomenon that will just affect the serpents of that area, which I find to be very interesting.
I'm just not going to paint.
Yeah, I like it as a concept, but I also have to say that if the guide is that if it's 3 to 4 feet long, then it's just a snake. So get out your measuring stick. But if it's 30 or 40 feet long, then it's probably the serpent. And I'm going, who in the hell can't tell the difference between? Well, I don't know,
not
man.
To mention,
this box could be 100 pounds or it could be 3,000.
Well, I believe that part of the mention was to use the stick to measure the width, because the width of the serpent is supposed to be 4 feet, like in like the diameter of the trunk of the snake. But you know, like there is grounds for this being a thing in a way, because you know there are certain pythons and snakes and stuff like that can get to almost that size, not quite 30, 40 feet. But they're mostly, you know, in South America, which is a hell in and of itself. But it's a very interesting. I don't know. It's like I like to theorize on, like, in terms of like the curse or that phenomenon, like what the mechanism for that was. Like, is it like the chief, as he died, like he put a curse on the lake, or is it like since he turned into this giant snake monster thing, is it like his blood seeped into the water and it affects the snake? It's a very interesting thing to think about.
I like the concept.
I do like the concept. It's a good concept.
I have to say that the size, and I only say this in the scientific sense. The size is interesting at 30 to 40 feet, because while it puts it above the size of a python, like even like the reticulated pythons or the Burmese pythons, it is the right size for a titanoboa.
I know. I was thinking that exact same thing, actually.
And they weren't even discovered. Like that was not a thing that was known at that time period. So
nope, not at that time. No, it was not.
I mean, but I would just presume that Maine is too cold of an area in the modern age, since the time of the Ice Age. But here's a thought: what if it's like a cultural memory dating back to prehistory, and you know, this is the story of how this giant snake came about, was because it was actually, you know, a relic titanoboa or something along those lines.
Yeah, like just like that one last survivor titanoboa or something.
You know,
I don't know, it's very interesting, but like there really is actually a rather, like, it's like legitimately a step-by-step guide written by the Europeans around like the I believe that the article I was reading was from the 1870s or the late 1860s. So it's had its own merit, its own like research done into it by the Europeans of that time. And like I said, a lot of Maine residents nowadays still claim to have seen at least the remnants of this creature in the water.
Well, that the guide at least fits with the time that skeleton was discovered too. I mean, it's within 50 years of a 100-foot serpent-like skeleton that washed up on a island in Maine.
Right.
And interestingly, the modern retelling of the articles on the skeleton is that it was actually a baleen wheel, or a what the hell is it? It's a big tooth shark, but not a megalodon. You know,
Bass sharks.
thrasher. I think the term they used was thresher or thrasher shark. But
Thresher sharks are the ones with the long tail.
right. But I mean, there's no shark within the last, several million years that have been, that size, A. And B,
Not that size,
it wouldn't
no.
have been a baleen whale because it was an inland lake, right? Am I wrong with this?
No, where it washed up, it was not an inland lake. But the skeleton stretched from the shoreline into the forest.
Jesus.
Like, and
So
there
a fin
were and there were reports of this particular sea serpent sunning itself on the banks of that island.
Imagine you're just chilling, looking at an island, and you see 100-foot long snake just curled up, just
I would
chilling.
die. I
chilling
would
in the-
legitimately keel the fuck over dead. Like, and
Well,
not
that's a
making
beep.
it out of that.
I mean, the reality is it's the same thing that we've talked about often since we moved to Texas, and it's that, can you imagine being that first white European settler coming up on an alligator and being like, "Holy crap, dragons!" Like.
I mean, yeah, if I saw an alligator without knowing like what they were, I would also be like, "Yeah, that's a dragon right there. Someone must have cut off his wings or something."
Because I mean, and I mean, some of the ones we've seen in the bayou are outsized. We're down to 1:04, by the way.
Yes.
The
We
countdown
really
of
need
doom.
to get the pro version of Zoom.
Yes. Otherwise, we're gonna continually do two-parters, and we're gonna get cut off like mid-sentence as we're about to do.
We have some guests coming
Indeed.
up.
We do have guests coming up, and I will preview them in the overlays at the end. And I
We're
think
gonna need more time. Is what I'm saying.
Oh yes, definitely. We're definitely we're gonna scooch over to the, I guess, west and head to New Hampshire. There's so much in New Hampshire. It makes Maine look small by comparison. I
did
like and
something in
stuff.
New Hampshire once. So was that in New Hampshire or the other one, Vermont, when we were on vacation once? I'd like to tell that story at some point.
Well, prep it for next one. All right, and with that, we got to go because we're gonna run out. It's less than a minute. Bye. Bye.